Hello, everyone. Uh, Welcome to this new episode of Convector Developers Office Hours. Uh, we'll be starting the show in a couple of minutes. It's just giving some time for the people to get into the video. So um, yeah, let's give a couple of minutes so we let everybody to join the streaming. I'll be right back. Hello, everyone again. Again, this is Diego. We will be talking about adapters in today's event. Just excuse me. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. On today's event, we'll be talking about mostly about the adapters in Convector and how you can use them to either manipulate them like richly or create new adapters for your custom needs. There has been some members in community asking on how to create new adapters. And the reason why you will want to do that is because Convector doesn't necessarily restrict you to use the Fabric adapter that we have created officially, which uses the Fabric client packages from the official Fabric packages from NPM. Uh, but with the arrival of this new Fabric network package from Fabric to use the smart contracts and use getaways and use wallets and things like that, you will want you might want to use this kind of features. So we're working on for example, in this case, for a new feature, a new adapter using this kind of a strategy to communicate with Fabric. But the point is that you don't necessarily restrict need to what Worsibu delivers about convector support for new chain codes, for new strategies to communicate with Fabric. And this is the richness, and this is the way that we expect to support multiple other blockchain frameworks in the future is by creating new adapters, because adapters at the end is the way, the layer that translates all your calls to the controllers to a specific blockchain instructions. So in the case of Fabric, we use the Fabric adapter, and the Fabric adapter uses underneath the Fabric client package from Hyperledger Fabric directly. And with this is the SDK we use to send transactions to the blockchain. But in case of Ethereum, or in case of Corda, or in case of any other blockchain that we might want to add Convector to, you can just swap this adapter and put an adapter specific for that blockchain infrastructure. And the richness about this is not strictly necessarily related to blockchain under the hood. You can create adapters to basically translate your calls to whatever you need. Uh, the most easy example for this is communicated with a blockchain, with a chain code that you deploy to a network, but there might be some other examples. We recently, a couple of weeks ago, and actually, I think on the last Convector episode, Developers Office Hours episode, we talked about interchain code communication. And this is communicating one channel with one other channel. And this is going to be invoking contracts from inside the chain codes per se. So we have a new adapter to make this, to be able to do this, because it's inside the chain code. You won't use the Fabric client. It's not a client. It's inside the chain code. So when you are trying to interact from one chain code to another chain code, you use this in Fabric in chain code Fabric adapter, Fabric in chain code adapter. Sorry, to communicate between two chain codes, two different chain codes. Another example that you can imagine is if you want to use the convector controllers in your front-end application. And as you know, there is no way to invoke Fabric directly from the browser because it uses gRPC and all this kind of stuff that is not supported in the browser. So you always have to have a server in the middle. So the most common case when you write an application, as you may know, is you create an application, you create a server holding the logic to invoke the chain code directly. And you might probably invoke this server logic from within an API or some other kind of connection. So if you are working in the front end and want to send a transaction to the server, and this actually involves a feature we just released this week, just getting ahead of the updates. Uh, with this week, we just released our REST API generator for controllers. So with just one command, you can just generate a full Node.js server exposing all the paths that you need for to invoke your controllers in the chain code without you having to actually write any single line of code. Uh, but when you're trying to interact from the front end with this server API, you will be most probably end up writing a controller wrapping up the functions to make the HTTP calls to the controllers in the server. One way to avoid this is to actually use a Fabric controller client, Convector controller client in the browser, and put an adapter, create an adapter that interacts with the REST API or send the transactions to the REST API that you have hosted somewhere. This is a really convenient way, and this is mostly what I will be talking about today, how to create this kind of adapters. This is an example. You can take it and place it and copy paste it to different other approaches or different other scenarios that you may encounter while designing your blockchain application. So I'll be sharing my screen first. So I want to share you, I want to give you a sneak peek about this new Convector REST API generator. I will be probably talking about this generator in the next episode. I just want to give you a quick overview of it and how to use it. So I have an example here, Fabcar example. This example is available in our GitHub repo. You can go there, and it's pretty old example that we just decided to update. Or you can type in here Fabcar, and you will see it's the same example, the marbles and the Fabcar that you found as examples of how to use Fabric and etc. You find this in the official documentation, but it pretty much register cars. It has a method in it that registers some cars in the ledger and goes saving one by one, and has a couple of methods to make query or create new ones or change the owner of the car. Examples to a pretty basic example. And with this pretty basic example, I actually have it cloned in here. Fabcar controller. You can see I have it in here, and the model of a car is pretty simple: make, model, color, and the owner. With this pretty example of Convector here, I will just go and create a file called API.json. It's called API.json. We'll have the configuration about the paths and the contract functions that you want to expose the REST API. So it will prompt you for three things. A function, which function do you want to expose from the controller? So if you come to the controller again, that is not our controller. I have init, get all, create, and change owner. So if I open up my API.json, I have init, get all, create, and change owner. The controller where those methods are located is in public controller, and the verb depends of what I want, the HTTP verb that I want the REST API to create this. So in some cases I want to use post, some others I want to use get, etc., etc. This is all you need. And with this, you will come here and run function like first let's install a package. So you run npm i or cebu REST API. This you can install this globally if you may to have it available your whole computer. And I have already installed it, so I won't run this again. But this is how you can install it on your computer. I will zoom this in case it's not pretty visible. But yeah, with this you install it in your computer, and then you go and run npx REST API generate new API, and you pass the chain code name. In my case, it's Fabcar. The name of the chain code is Fabcar, and I pass the configuration file with that f dash f of organization one of Fabcar.config. This is generated if you created a new project with the Convector CLI tool. So when you run this, it will generate a folder like this. And if you come here and inspect it, you'll have a couple of things. Or you will just have a pretty basic Express server, nothing too fancy, just serves the purpose. It has some core flags. You can come here and edit the settings if you need to, or make any changes to it. But the configurations is mostly in the controller section. Here you have a router where it defines all the routes. You can see, for example, that the method get that in the controller requires an ID as a parameter. It will become in the URL as a path parameter. Everything else, for example, the post for create, since it's a post, it will map the parameters in the body. So you will have to send a JSON object in the body with all the properties or the parameters that you were expecting to receive and things like that. And the controller is pretty simple. Just generated code to call each of the functions and return whatever they return in the API. So this is pretty convenient, and I encourage you to try it. The tool was firstly generated, the Convector REST API generator was first generated by a member of the community, Luca. And recently we just were taking some tweaks to it. We're releasing it in beta right now and expect it to be included in the conf command in the next releases. So okay, I will go and check the video just in case we have any questions. Just looks like done. Let me try something. I need to run npm I here because I was trying to install an Angular application in our example. But yeah, let's take a look. So first of all, I want to show you what is an adapter. What is the code of an adapter? And the most basic one that I can show you right now is the adapter fabric. Okay, this that we're seeing here is the source code of the Convector framework, and you can always inspect it. You will find that inside the at workzebo folder, you will find the Convector adapter fabric. And here you find the fabric controller adapter. And it's a really thin file. It's not pretty much. There's not too much to see here. And the things that we need to take a look is that we have a class here is being named fabric controller adapter, and it implements the controller adapter class. The controller adapter comes from workzebo Convector core. So this is in the core of the framework. The controller adapter is a part of the core framework. The fabric adapter instead is not part of the core framework. It's part of the platform fabric, Convector platform fabric. This is the one that exports the adapter fabric. So this is good and convenient because for other platforms, for example, when we drop support, official support for other blockchains, you will have all the fabric separated from that other blockchain. We now continue with the explanation. We implement the controller adapter in here, and the only thing that actually let's inspect this core adapter, and we have a controller adapter here, and it's a really thin interface. It's named controller adapter, and it says it requires a method named evoke. It will have this kind of parameters, the controller that you're expecting to invoke, the name of the function, any extra configuration that you need to pass, and all the arguments that the function that you're going to invoke passed in sequential order. It will also have a query function, but this is a parameter that not not all the adapters have to have a query option. In the case of Fabric, we do have a query. And if you try to invoke this query method on the controller adapter for Fabric, what it will do is instead of send a transaction, propose a transaction to the network and commit it, which is what invoke does. The query method will just send the transactions, propose the transactions to the peers, and when they get the response back, they won't commit those transactions, those responses that they get back. So in Fabric, if you're really familiar with how Fabric works, is it proposes the transactions to all the peers. It then gets all the responses from all the peers where they send the transaction. And if all the responses are okay, or if they match what the consensus was previously set for that chain code, they send all the responses with the corresponding signatures to the orderer to approve and commit the transactions to each of the peers. So the query method just pretty much skips the whole orderer part. They just need a response. They just need what the peer responded to that transaction, and that's it. This is to avoid pretty much is when you have controllers where they just return some data, some calculated data or some private data they have stored, but you don't really need to store in the ledger that you actually made or perform that call. You just need the response of the node and nothing else. So those are the only two methods that a controller adapter has to have. It can have any other extra methods that you want. That is nothing of stopping the adapter authors to make any other methods they need. But these two are the only part of the controller adapter specification. So okay, back to the Fabric controller adapter. We have an invoke method in here, and we have the query method in here. And let's inspect what the invoke is doing. Is just calling super that invoke. And why super? Okay, so the Fabric controller adapter inherits from the client helper. The client helper is a class and a utility class that we have developed internally for the Convector framework. You can find the code of it in here in the common Fabric helper. It is a class. I need to abstract all the complexities behind the Fabric client object. You can see that we import the client from Fabric client in here, and pretty much we grab and make some shortcuts on top of it to get the organizations, to get all the channels and all stuff, to invoke and send transactions to the network. So the Fabric controller just extends that class, the client helper, and it uses its methods, just pretty simple. So we call invoke, and we here send the configuration, the method that we're calling. You will find this familiar in Convector. You know that the methods, when you invoke them via the CLI or something like that, or without Convector, how you invoke these functions is by typing the name of the controller underscore and the name of the function. That's actually the function name, how it's registered inside the chain code. And then we pass the configuration of which chain code we need to pass. Yep. Let me take a look. Controller adapter. Yeah, the name of the chain code, correct? So we're going to invoke. We pass any configurations with any extra configurations that we have for the invoke. This can be actually this can be a couple of things. It depends. Actually, this is an object to pass properties and configuration to the adapter that is going to take care of the host. In this case, we're not doing pretty much anything with the configuration, but this is useful in case, for example, the Fabric in-chain code adapter, when we need to pass the configuration to tell which is the other chain code that we're going to invoke, and which is the chain code name where it's located, and things like that. and you end up passing all the arguments to this invoke method. So at the end, it will get a result, and we just simply return it. Or if it throws an error, which might happen if not all the peers responded with the same response, or some peers have failed the response, or if all the peers failed to respond the proposal, and in which case we take certain actions to just handle the errors appropriately for the Fabric specification, and we grab everything in a client response uh, just to give a nice format on the console when it's done. But yeah, pretty much what this method will allow you to do is take this information, the controller that we want to invoke, the chain code, configuration, and arguments, and do whatever you want to do with this. In this case, we're invoking the super invoke to call the chain code, but in your case, it might be calling an HTTP or calling another client to communicate with Fabric, for example, or another method to communicate with another blockchain. And the query method is pretty much the same thing. It takes the same arguments, and we just return whatever the query returns. There's not too much to see here. The thing is that we have to have separate functions because since they are different actions, it can be invoked in different ways. Now, how do we invoke it? How do we call directly? Invoke or query? We don't. In the code, you will never see a call to invoke or a call to query directly. What you will see, however, is because we grab everything in the controller client. So let's take a look at here. The controller client or the client factory, you will see client factory is inspected or imported from the controller client. And the client factory, it takes a controller, and the second argument is an adapter. So the client factory is actually the one that will invoke each of the controller methods through the methods of the adapter. So the controller client will return me what seems to be the test controller, which is actually a modified version. It's a Convector controller client of the controller itself. So, and why this is important? Because it has some extra methods. As you can see, you can type test controller.test and make a simple call to a function in the controller named test, and it will return what that function is supposed to return. But in some other cases, for example, in test controller, when I want to make a query, the way that I do that is by typing this $query, invoking this function, and what this is going to do is it will return me the whole controller again, but just all the methods will be in query mode. So whatever function I invoke from query will be just a query invocation. It won't be an invoke call. So it will use this query from the adapter instead of using the invoke. You can see. What are the things you can do? You can type .config and pass an object. This allows you to pass any configurations to the config object in here that you can locate it in here. This will allow you to pass any configurations. Why we want something like this? For example, in the Fabric in-chain code adapter, I have an example in here on how we invoke one chain code from within another chain code. That will be, let me think, it's in here, yeah. So in here, I have an in-chain code adapter. I have a client factory, and I pass the controller, and I pass the adapter, the same two parameters as well. So I have this second controller, which is actually a Convector controller client, which has all the utilities. And to this second controller, I type this $config and pass a configuration. In this configuration, I will pass the transaction, the channel, and the chain code. How do I know that I need to pass this configuration? Because the in-chain code adapter demands those properties. If we go to the chain code adapter, you will see it has an interface called in-chain code adapter config, and it demands these three properties. Uh, and it uses those properties to decide, like, well, I need to make the transaction in the same transaction that is being taking place right now. Remember, it's an in-chain code in transaction invocation to another contract and things like that. So yeah, I used to pass the configurations like this, and then I call the method that gets from the controller, and this is it. This is pretty much how we grab all the functionality of the adapters in the using the controller client. So I promise you, I was going to show you a third adapter, and I have it in here. So for those of you, if you're new to Convector or you have come recently, we have a stack blitz template with Convector and Convector using Angular. What is a stack blitz? A stack blitz is just like an IDE in your browser that you can use all the time without having to download Convector and npm and Node.js and all the stuff. You just type stackblitz.com edit Convector, and you will have in here in your hands Convector running in your browser just to try it out quickly. Yeah. So if you ever find a book that is in the core framework, you can reproduce it in a file like this and send the file to us so we can take a look better what is the error taking place. But I'm going to show you the Convector Angular. Yeah. The Convector Angular example is just a pretty example. It's actually the same example that we have in the Convector one, but using Angular. And this is to prove you that a Convector can run with Angular. And the way that we do this is by creating an Angular service. You will see we have an injectable service from Angular in here. For those of you familiar with Angular, we create a new adapter. It uses the browser controller adapter. Browser controller adapter, it comes from platform browser. It's just an adapter to emulate the functionality of blockchain inside the browser. So it's sort of fake. It won't make any transactions to any ledger. It won't make any history or things like that. It just will write all the things that you send to this adapter to the local storage. And that's it. That's everything that it's going to do. So we have this adapter. We have the client factory again. We use the controller, and we pass this adapter that we just created. And then we call it the init function, where we pass all the controllers embedded in this adapter. So with this in mind, I have a couple of controllers in here. I have a user controller with some methods: register, rename, transfer. And I can come here and type username is going to be test. Oh, I have a test already. Username will be vector, and the password will be 123455. And I have Convector in here as $1,000, and I would like to, let's see, I would like to transfer from Convector to the user Diego. Let's see how much Diego has. Okay, okay, 70,000. Okay, transfer account to Diego, and I'll pass 300. And the password 123455, I think I can remember. Yeah, and now Diego has 2,000, and Convector has 700. All right, so 200, yeah. So this pretty much exemplifies. If I reload this page from here, reload, you will see that the amounts remain the same. This is because, again, where the convector adapters that we are using for this example is using the local storage to store everything. But yeah, how does this work? And I will show you the code, source code. Take a look. Okay, I have the adapter browser in here, and you will pretty much see I only have the invoke. I don't have query for this because I wanted to make it really simple. So the invoke is going to get these that controllers that get. Controllers is a private property, it's a map, and it maps the name of a controller to a convector controller. We use this in the init method to initialize everything. That's why you see we're passing a controller in here in the init method. So we get the controller and we just invoke the method that was expected uh, to be called here. Okay, yeah, controller. Let me see. This is the parameter that we're passing to the call. Correct. Controller is the name of the controller. Okay. Yeah, we're just stating the context of this method. Some dark magic that did in JavaScript here. We're then passing all the arguments. All the arguments needs to be passed as an array of string. So I'm just plotting and doing a map over all the parameters to make them a string. And as the sender, I am passing to the evaluation of this contract whatever value is in config.user or this.user. So you can take a look that when I'm invoking from one of the components, the Angular component, for example, in the transfer method, take a look. No, is in the app component. Yeah, I have a transfer in here. What it will do is this.user is user. This $with user is a method from the controller client. So you can take a look in here for the controller adapter. Sorry. It has a method. Yeah, it has these three methods right now. It has with user, where you can pass a string and tell the username that you want to use. Notice that this one mess up with all the user MSP and certificate. It will just pass a configuration with the username that we're intended to do. The adapter already needs to have information about what to do with this username. That's why we only use it for the browser. We have this other method called query, and that I already show you. And we have this other method called config. Those are the three operators that we have for the controller client. So in this case, where I'm calling the with user, and I'm passing just the password as the user that I'm using. This is how I'm storing it internally in this example. And then I call the method transfer. So with this operator with user, I'm just switching the context of the adapter. The adapter already knows that it has to operate under a certain user, and when it receives the user, it will change the way that it interacts with the ledger, in this case, local storage, for example. But yeah, this is pretty much how you do it. Let's take a look at YouTube. Looks like there's no questions. Right. All right. So now the question: how to create a new adapter, or what do I need to create a new adapter? I was going to show you how to create a new UI adapter. I was installing a new Angular application in here. Something is missing. Initialize and also ambient context. This is in the Fabric CC. Let's take a look. Right, controller. This is in the model, right? Yep. All right. I think this is because I installed Angular. I just installed Angular on this on this UI, and the TypeScript is completing it a little bit. But yeah, let's not worry about this for now. It doesn't matter with the current configuration. What I'm going to do is create a new adapter. So first thing, oops, right? First thing, I will install the Fabric CC controller inside this UI and the external add Fabcar CC, the name right, Fabcar CC with the scope of UI. Right, so I will add that, and once it's done, I will be creating a new file here called uh, backend.adapter.ts. And this, oops, looks like VS Code going crazy. And it failed again. The file adapter backend adapter.ts. Right, there you go. Just for simplicity, I will just copy paste. In this case, the browser adapter, I think is the most simplest one. For this case, I will just copy paste it in here. I will delete a couple of things in here, just like delete all this stuff and delete all this stuff. Okay. I have the Convector core. I don't have the Convector code yet, so I have to install that. Let's add Convector core. Actually, I have to add a couple of more. So let's add in the UI project here. I'll cut it here, and I'll add. Actually, let's drop it from here. Registration, dependencies. I need a vector core. And what else I will need? I think that's it. That's the only thing I need. So let's run npm I again. While this is installing, I will be creating the adapter. Okay, so this adapter is going to be used to fetch or make a REST API operation from the front end to the REST API that we generated in here in the server. So as you remember, this API has this kind of routes here. Fabric init, Fabcar get ID, Fabcar get all, Fabcar create, Fabcar change owner. I actually don't know if it will give me enough time to create this adapter, but let's try it out. Okay, so I need to make a REST API. So I will need to install also an HTTP client, I think. I actually think I can make this an Angular service and inject the HTTP client. So let's do that. Port from Angular HTTP client. HTTP, I think. Common, I think is the one. Let's check out Angular docs. I can remember very well. That's API, HTTP, HTTP common, HTTP package. Yeah. Right. I have HTTP client in here. and I will inject it in here. Private HTTP of kind HTTP client. I will also have to make this injectable. Providing root. And I think that's it. All right. So when I proceed and invoke transaction or invoke call in this adapter, I will make an HTTP request. I'll make that like doing this HTTP. Yeah. Now this will okay. I have to pick up the method. Let's take a look. I think I will create for the simplicity. I will create a map. I won't just architecture whole thing. I will just create a map, routes, and I will copy what I have in the API JSON. Actually, I can just import the API JSON. For simplicity, let's just copy it for now. Okay. So I'll have all the verbs in here. This is the controller, right? I'll change this for the Fabcar. So this can match the routes in here. Fabcar and the init and the verb. Okay, so I have everything I need, correct? And whenever I get a response on route, I will first find the corresponding route. If route that, okay, so in the controller method, remember I will have the controller, yeah, I will have, yeah. This is the name of the function, correct? So find the route that has the function equals to name, and find the error dot controller equals to controller. All right. This will find a route. If it doesn't find any route, I just simply throw an error. And with the route, I will make this HTTP, the verb. So the verb is present in the route.verb. This either will be get or post or put or whatever. And I will make a call. Now I can remember the parameters. For example, on get, parameters are URL and the options, okay, the body. Okay, HTTP verb. And I will make the path. The path will be this dot controller. No, sorry, this no. Route dot controller slash route dot function, and in the parameters I have it's a body. I have to make it choice, yeah. So options equal to an empty object. Now pass that in here. And if the route is get, then I will go options.params equal to, and I will pause all the items that was passed into this function. If not, if the verb route verb equal to post, then options.body will be the list of arguments. Now, okay, yeah, all right, and I will return this, right? So pretty much, I have configured the browser controller adapter right now. Let's take a look. For example, if I want to make an invocation, to actually copy some code from the stack bits. Let's copy up this service. The service is going to create the adapter. Okay. I have to create a new service called service this one. And backend service and Convector Fabcar service. But yes. So export class Fabcar service and injectable and providing root, right? And this will constructor, this will get injected the adapter. What was the name I put to this browser controller adapter service? And I pass browser controller adapter service. And I think that's it, right? Yeah, I have to make this. And the adapter doesn't need any configuration. That's right. Adapter. It won't be a browser controller adapter. Browser controller adapter. Browser controller adapter service. Yeah, let's name it like that. Okay, now this will be like this. And the factory will use this adapter and the controller. I don't have the controller yet. I think I have installed it in the past. Yeah. Import from Fabcar CC. I will import the controller. Fabcar controller. Pass it in here. This adapter. Here you go. And client factory has to import from Convector core. There you go. And I think that's it. Let's see. Will be a Fabcar controller, right? So in the app component, now we got here, and I promise you we're about to finish the whole example. I will import the Fabcar private Fabcar service. All right, and if I want to invoke the controller, if I want to make a connection from the Angular frontend to the Node.js backend and from the Node.js backend to the blockchain, I'll simply do Fabcar that Fabcar controller that init example. Now, what this is going to happen, I think I won't make this won't take any time to run the whole server because I still need to fix this. There's for some reason it's fading the types still. But the whole idea is this, and I promise you I'll put the repo code in GitHub so you can take a look at this later. I'll put all the steps in the README. Actually, I need a waiting here. Use that init async init await. Okay. So what is going to happen is we're going to make this invocation from the app component, which is in the front end, right? This Fabcar controller that you need, Fabcar controller, remember, it comes from in here the Fabcar service. It is a client factory. This client factory is using this adapter. This adapter is actually a browser controller adapter service. This browser controller adapter service is what we call in here the adapter for Angular. We're implementing the controller adapter, remember? All right. So this controller adapter is going to take a dependency injection of HTTP. And when the controller client invokes the function, it will execute this invoke method. It will pass the name of the controller, the name of the function, any extra configuration. But in this case, I'm not doing anything like config, right? So there's nothing that is going to take in here in the config parameter. I'm not using it at all. So, and I will get all the elements, right? Now that I get into this function, I will find the corresponding route, which is going to be one of them. And I will match it by matching each of the route function and the route controller with the actual name and controller that is being passed to the invoke function. In this case, it is going to be, the controller is going to be Fabcar, and the method is going to be init. All right, and now that we match the route that we were about to use, if we don't find any route, we throw an error. And if the verb is get, I will just pass the parameters in the query string. If the verb is post, I will pass the parameters in the body. And I will make an invocation, an AJAX invocation from the browser to the API server request. Okay, now this call from here is going to jump to the server code, to the auto-generated service code that we created with the Convector REST API. It will match this path, actually Fabcar init, that was the one that we were invoking in front end. It will call this method. This method, what it's doing is Fabcar controller backend that init. And if you actually pay attention, Fabcar controller client is a Convector controller client as well. It is defined in this folder. But the difference is this client factory is using this adapter, which is a Fabric controller adapter. Now remember, this is all in the server, in the backend. This is using Fabric controller adapter, where we are specifying the user and all the configurations to communicate with Fabric. And now when it goes to Fabric controller adapter and calls the invoke method of this adapter, it will send a transactions to all the peers and communicate and commit that back to the order if all the responses were okay. So as you can see, well, there's a lot of layers that we're abstracting by using Convector, and you can abstract all these complexities by making adapters. So you will end up invoking the same function, the function that you define in your contract, in your controller, pretty easily through all the layers. You can invoke it pretty simple in the backend. You can invoke it pretty simple in your front end. If you are a React JS developer and you are developing a mobile application with React Native, you can do something like this and create an adapter that uses the HTTP methods from the mobile. You can do all that kind of stuff just by writing adapters. That, as you can see, they are pretty simple to do. This is not too much to do. And with this, you can abstract a lot of complexities and put different adapters in different parts of the layer of the stack that your application is running, and create rich applications pretty convenient, pretty easily. You have the same controller in your backend, in your front end, in your contract, in your smart contract, and you can even put an adapter to inter-chain communication to communicate from one controller to another controller in another chain code. It might be in another channel as well, for example. So, all right, guys. this is everything for today. I will go and check if there is no questions. I think there was no one. Yep. Thank you very much for joining this week. Uh, I will be posting this code example in GitHub, and I will be posting the links to that in the Discord channel. So if you want to get more information about it, go and check it out. Today is June 21, so you can go to the Discord history. Actually, I will just post the link in the video YouTube description, so you can better take a look at them very quickly. And yeah, thank you very much for joining this week. As always, leave your questions for next week's video, and thank you very much.